This week I learned independent filmmaking, that may be the way forward for the horror genre. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with another weekly update. This one for about the midway point of October. You guys got all of your spooky season reads going and ready for Halloween because those trick-or-treaters will be knocking on the door any day now. It just goes by way too quick every single year. I just love this time of year, and it does just zip right by. But let's go ahead and get into this week, guys. Let's begin, like always, talking about what am I reading. I'm about 5 chapters in to The Warrior Prophet by R. Scott Baker. 5 chapters don't seem like a much. It's 120 pages, and 120 pages in a Prince of Nothing book is actually quite the feat here. Now with this, I felt like it was easier to step into it, obviously, with the first one because you're familiar with the lands, you're familiar with the characters, and things like that. So the first 3 or 4 chapters, okay, I'm following it quite fine. Then chapter 5 happened. I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go again. Because you're dealing with this band that's traveling through the desert. Obviously, they're beginning this holy war march, and you're getting associated with all these different war leaders, and most of them are new names or someone that I'm just not really recalling from the first one. There's just so many new names. So once again, I'm learning all these things where I'm just like, yo, I just want to know what's going on with ℚ𝕦𝕤𝕣𝕠𝕜𝕤 and 𝕬𝕠𝕠𝕠 and ℚ𝕤𝕤𝕣𝕠𝕠. I want to know what's going on with that. But I understand he's going to keep building his world. And that's obviously something where it's not frustration where it's just like, okay, I felt like I was past that, and now he's putting me back in that situation. But with this, it's like there's things I'm liking for sure. I kind of want to ring a ℚ𝕦𝕤𝕠𝕠 around the neck because I'm like, dude, you know this thing. Why aren't you saying anything? Hello. And then I'm like, okay, kind of put yourself in this guy's shoes here. So, for example, and I'll make it very vague so I don't feel like I'm ruining anything for you. Say that you knew in the real world who the Antichrist was. You knew without a shadow of a doubt. And you were like, why aren't you telling him? Because I feel like once you tell somebody, then it's real. And I think that's kind of where ℚ𝕦𝕤𝕠𝕠𝕜's at right now. So he feels like he should be telling the mandate these things, but he's scared because then it's going to be real. So he has confided in someone else, and we'll kind of see where it goes from there. And ℙ𝕦𝕤𝕣𝕠's got a really interesting arc here at the beginning as well. So those characters, I feel like ℚ𝕦𝕤𝕠𝕠 is the only one that's kind of been neglected so far in this. If he's going to be this great war leader, I want to see more. It's one of those things where I'm anxious because ℚ𝕤𝕤𝕠𝕠 I thought had the coolest story in the first book, and I kind of want more of that character because he does have that ℙ𝕬𝕬𝕣𝕠 vibe, that Conan the Barbarian vibe, and that's obviously something that clicks with me quite a bit. And I'm hoping that that Baker will actually give me more of ℚ𝕤𝕠𝕠 as time goes by. But so far, it's like I'm really liking the ℙ𝕬𝕠𝕠 parts, obviously, and the ℚ𝕦𝕤𝕠𝕠 parts. But it's just kind of getting associated with all those new war leaders. It's been kind of a struggle for me in some places, but I'm suspecting to like this quite a bit. It seems like we're inevitably that part 1 is going to be that setup. I think it has 3 or 4 parts in here, and then we're going to get to this actual holy war is actually going to pop off in this book, and I'm anxious to see, honestly, because there hasn't been a ton of action in these books. I'm anxious to see how Baker does write battles, because that's something that I feel like not every fantasy author can do well, especially the ones that really lean more on the inner monologues, the philosophical, just the views of everything that's going on around the world. I'm anxious to see how he actually writes some actual warfare here. So maybe by next week I can give you a really, really good update on it. But that's really all I have gotten to this week. Leads me to what am I going to read. I'm taking a weekend trip with the kids, actually. So that's always hit or miss how that's going to go. If they want to go off and do their own thing, then cool. I'll get a little bit more reading time in. But if not, it's just going to be dad shit all weekend, and I'm good with that. So we're actually taking off on Sunday. We'll be back on Tuesday. But it should be fun. I'm going to keep working on the Warrior Prophet, hopefully, while that is going on. But if not, that's really all I'm going to be doing this week. Say something happens and I go crazy or I need a little bit of change of pace, I'll be starting The Fury of the Gods. The conclusion to the Bloodsworn Saga by Jean Gwynne. I did get that arc. It was one of those things where I would have not planned my schedule out the way that it was if I knew I was getting this. But, I never count on getting a review copies because it's hit or miss on if I get them or not. But I'll be starting that immediately after. I think it comes out on Tuesday officially for everybody. So you'll probably get a chance to read it before I do, since I am in the middle of a Baker book. And Baker books, you don't really share time with anything else. Or else you may never actually finish it. But that's really all I've got kind of going on. And every year around November, I start to talk about my series in permanent ink, where it's new series. I promise to start at least book 1 to try to discover some new series. And I started whittling that down a little bit. And I thought, hey, this would be a great time for you guys to find out about the sponsor of this week's video. So there's a Kickstarter going on right now for the Fatemarked epic by David Estes. Now, which works out great, guys, because this is a series I was really interested in beginning in 2025. So they are the Fatemarked, misunderstood, worshipped, hated, and murdered at birth. But their time to step into the light has come. Now, guys, this is going to be an amazing looking 5-book set with foil stamp covers. They got like a faux leather binding, deluxe slipcase with a special edition foil bookmark. It looks a lot like the Threadlight one that was done by Zach Argyle last year. It was really just beautiful. That's what it seems a lot like. But of course, these are all going to be signed by the author, David Estes, and it's got a full color map on the end sheets. But I think a question that I would get with something like this, obviously, is how is the art? Now, I want you guys to just look at some of these drawings. These are amazing. There's supposed to be a minimum of 20 color illustrations in this set. 4 per book is the plan right now, but that's a minimum. And I say a minimum because depending on the stretch goals, there will be more. Now, he's already reached to get these actually made, but we're actually getting closer to some of those stretch goals now. There's supposed to be some black and white art kind of hidden with some Easter eggs maybe in there. And I've heard a lot of great feedback on this series, and even ℕ𝕦𝕣𝕠𝕜𝕤𝕤 Jovovich of Fifth Element fame is a huge fan of this series. So that was really cool. So this runs through October the 30th. And you can get on board and help him hit that stretch goal because he's really close, guys, the next one, which is going to get us 10 new illustrations in these books. So a couple more per book sounds really cool. So hit the link in the description, guys, below to enter a world of magic and dragons, kings and queens, and victory and defeat during a time when honor and valor still meant something. So how about this week on the channel, guys, to do a couple of fun things. I had a really interesting conversation. I say interesting because it's one of those things like when I talk to like Philip or I talk to AP Canavan where I feel like, I don't know if I'm smart enough to be in this conversation, and that might be because of the accent. But I did talk to Ollie over at ℚ𝕦𝕤𝕦𝕤𝕦. He does focus a lot more on crime, horror, and pulp than I do. So I wanted to get a kind of a horror booktuber kind of on the channel for the month of October, and it was a great conversation. I gotta say, Ollie is just an absolute scholar and a gentleman. I felt like it's one of those things where you listen to a broadcast of a sports game with like someone who used to be a Hall of Fame pitcher or is a Hall of Fame pitcher and he used to play and now he's announcing and you're like, well, I feel like I'm learning stuff right now. So I felt like talking with Ollie. He got a lot of new horror authors on my recommendation list that I'm going to check out. A lot of the feedback I got in the comments was like, oh yes, that's definitely it. A lot of people want me to do The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. That's one that he recommends. The reason I haven't done that book, guys, is every time I think I'm going to, I get just barraged with so many divisive comments on it. But that was one that did come up several times. We're both big Stephen King fans, and it's a fun conversation. I always love getting to talk to other booktubers, and Ollie is a great one. Subscribe to his channel if you haven't, because I think his stuff is just like me. He just wants more people to read. That's why he does this, and I hope he can convince several of you to do so. And thank him again for his time. Our time difference is why we did it on Saturday. It's hard for us to get 6-7 hours of a time zone difference there. But I want to thank him for taking the time to do so. I put out just a short video, which was a clip earlier of my book of the month for September. I didn't mean to do it so late in the month. Things just kind of got out of hand. I kind of forgot about it. But the reason I want to get one out there is because I didn't do a full review for Ordinary Grace. But I thought it was a wonderful book. So I want to make sure I isolated that and put that out there in case anybody's curious about Ordinary Grace. Incredible. If you're into coming of age stories in a small town America, I think that's going to be right in your sweet spot. I don't see how you wouldn't enjoy something like that. It really much felt like if Stephen King's The Body and Robert McCammon's Boy's Life just kind of shook hands and said, let's make a baby. That's kind of how that book felt to me. Very good book. And speaking of Stephen King, I did put out the video that I never really had thought about doing before. And that was my Why You Should Read Stephen King. And the reason I say that is 5 years into this, that's my favorite author. You thought that I would have done that one much earlier. Just never really thought there was a need to because, I'd done several videos about, where you should start with Stephen King. That's the question I get asked the most from new viewers is where should I start with Stephen King? So I've actually made that video twice. I do my Into the Multiverse videos. I've talked about his scariest stories. I've done the Dark Tower FAQ. I've done all kinds of things for Stephen King on the channel, even my tier list rankings. But I've never thought, hey, maybe I should try to approach some people who are still curious about starting with Stephen King, or if they're even interested in his writings, to talk about why he has been my favorite author for 30 years now, and that's why I did put that out. Had a lot of fun making the reading introduction for that one. Trying to get Stephen King quotes down to a minute and a half, my favorite ones, was not easy, and I deleted a lot that I wanted to use, but I think the theme that I was going for in there is that the transition from childhood to adulthood, the coming of age, as it were, within the multiverse by Stephen King can be quite scary, and not just because of the monsters. And I think that's kind of the theme that I always appreciate the most in his books. It isn't always just the monsters. Sometimes it's the humans that are the real monsters. And I hope I did get that across. And I hope I got some of you to pick up Stephen King for the first time. So I spent a lot of time on that. So if you guys have a few extra minutes, you want to check it out, I would appreciate it. And again, like I say at the end of that video, if you guys still aren't sure where to start with Stephen King, just hit me up. Hit me up. I would love to have that conversation with you. Over on Mike's Media Reviews, spooky season is in full effect, and we did several reviews. We've still got a couple in the can here. We did this week, we released one for Salem's Lot. We did Beetlejuice 2, and we did The Conjuring from 2013, which is one of my favorite scary movies of the century, I think. And we got several more coming next week, and we're actually going to record some more because we're continuing to watch all these things as we do every spooky season. So it should be fun. Should have got content on Mike's Media Reviews every other day or so now. So hopefully you guys will drop in and subscribe over there. I've got the link down below if you guys want to join us over there. Would love to have you if you like hearing about TVs and movies and stuff like that. My wife joins me for all those, and it's a fun conversation. How about some next week plans, guys? Got a couple things. Even though I am going to be heading out of town, I got a couple things that I am planning to do. I'll be going ahead and announcing my reading plans for November. I already kind of spoiled the first one for you there. But I'm going to be breaking off of what I have been doing recently with the one horror, one sci-fi, one fantasy, etc. It looks like the sabbatical on big books is going to be over. And I'm going to be getting more into some fantasy. Because in the end, guys, I'm a fantasy first kind of person. And I'm not going to do well reading just one fantasy book per month. That isn't going to work for me. So I enjoyed it. It was fun to get some new horror authors in there. It was fun to learn about some sci-fi stuff that I hadn't read before. But I feel good about going back to, I'm not going to neglect those going forward. I'm definitely going to pay more attention to them than I used to. But the one per month thing, that is being retired for now. And it should be interesting to see the feedback on my November reads, because I can tell you right now, I'm never going to be able to read all 4 of them that I have planned, because some of them are massive. And we'll talk about that there. Then I'm thinking about doing some kind of Halloween reading. I planned on doing something because last year I did A Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun for me, but it was very, very, it hurt my voice quite a bit, because the voice I chose for Scrooge, I thought it was a good voice if I was grading myself, but it would wreck my voice for it took me days to do that recording for, a 100-page book. And so I said this time, make sure that you don't choose some voices that are actually damaging to your vocal cords. But I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. I was going to do Lovecraft, and then someone introduced me to Horror Babble, and all the ones I plan to do, I'm like, well, they've already done them, and they do them really great. I don't know if I really have anything to add to doing that. So I don't know. We'll see. But I am going to do some kind of reading of some kind of short story or something like that I think could be fun for the holiday season. Because in the end, guys, I would love to read audiobooks. I think it would be a lot of fun to do so. And like I said, spooky season will continue over on Mike's Media Reviews as well. I think we got reviews for The Shining coming up. We did The Pope's Exorcist. We even went back and did Little Monsters with the kids, the old Fred Savage movie. Yeah, that's a wild one. And lots of fun things to say about that movie. So again, you guys are into movies and media. Why don't you drop on over there? Speaking of TV and movie things, got a couple of things to talk about here. We did watch Terrifier, and the reason I want to bring this up, because we're going to review it over on Mike's Media Reviews, but I wanted to point this one out because a lot of people were seeing that I watched Terrifier, and they were assuming that meant I had seen Terrifier 3, the brand new one, and they were dropping in my messages about spoilers, and I'm like, I've only watched the first one. So I liked it quite a bit. It was, yes, everybody told me about the gore and things like that, and yes, eat your heart out, Jigsaw, is what I'll say, because holy shit, there are some things, and they're like, wow, I don't know how they got this. Oh, it was an independently made film. And I'm like, this is how all horror should be going forward. Independent release, because I know that the budget's going to be the biggest thing. And there are some things in there. It's like, yeah, it looks like this is shot in someone's garage. It looks really low budget. But for this, I felt like it worked for the aesthetic they were going for. It looked like almost like the late 70s, early 80s, almost like Trauma kind of aesthetic. Looked like it was shot on like 8mm film at times. And Art the Clown, what an eerie character, doesn't utter a word, because he's a mime. And he's just, I mean, look, clowns are already scary. That's a cheat code. And you would think in this time period where everybody's just like, oh, come on, what are you trying to rip off Pennywise? Not even close. It's very much, I feel like if you were kind of doing a silent version of Pennywise and mixing with like a John Wayne Gacy or something like that, that's kind of a little more than I get with the clown thing. But it's so much more than that. But I did enjoy taking a lot of those horror tropes like the final girl kind of thing and turning it on its head. It's one of those things where like I figured out the twist that it shows at the beginning. I figured it out like almost immediately what it was going to be. Didn't change the movie at all. And it's not one of those kind of movies where I'm going to say, yeah, this is fine filmmaking. I'm just saying if you were into the horror genre, especially during the slasher age in like the early 80s, like the Tom Savini era of horror, I think there's some Romero stuff. I think that you'd like it quite a bit. But yeah, it's not for the weak stomach. It's very violent. It's very gory. And yeah, it's going to upset you. I mean, that's horror, in my opinion. It's supposed to make you uncomfortable. It's supposed to make you mad. It's supposed to make you scared. That's what horror is as a genre overall. So it's not going to be a film for everybody. But I liked what he did, and I'm very interested to try Terrifier 2. Now, that's one of those things where I'm like, my wife's going to probably need some time to recover because of all the movies we picked. This is the one that she was the most scared to do, but she did good. She did good. She covered her eyes during that one scene, and if you've seen it, you know what that one scene is. But overall, I think that she had good things to say about it, but she's not ready to jump right into Terrifier 2, if you know what I'm saying. And that again, I kind of mentioned the independent horror. It can be very successful because you can get around a lot of the red tape that studios don't want to touch. They are afraid to put these things out. But look, this guy keeps doing. I can't think of the director, producer's name at the moment. But he just put out Terrifier 3 at the box office. Look, a $20 million opening with a $2 million budget. I mean, he just funded everything that he probably wants to do for the rest of his career, and that's awesome. I say, like, this is the way forward for independent film for a horror, because I feel like you're never going to get past the MPAA with very many things. And I don't know how many hoops you have to jump through to even get a theatrical release or something like this, because it was still rated R. But I don't know. I just feel like there's so many things you can get away with when a studio isn't going to be like, no, we can't abide that in our films. I think it's a fun formula, and I'm interested in continuing with the Terrifier series. And Art the Clown, it seemed like he's kind of breaking through as like a new horror icon, and that's tough to do. I feel like we haven't really had one maybe since, maybe Jigsaw. I brought that up. I'm trying to think if there's like a new horror icon that really is kind of where people who haven't even seen it can recognize it. Because I'm seeing the Art the Clown like Halloween costumes and some art and some stuff where people got like the dummies like outside with their Halloween decorations and stuff. That's cool. That's when you've made it. Is when you break through with the casuals on just brand recognition. That's really it. I think they're doing a great job there. I've just been watching that Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix, which it's one of those things where I thought it was going to be like a takedown doc, obviously because of regular, the recent news about Vince McMahon. But they even had the things to think that this was being recorded before those allegations came out. But it's still fun to go back and kind of see the peek behind the curtain of the good and the bad with the rise of everything from like WrestleMania 3 all the way through current day. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun if you're a big wrestling fan, or if you're just curious about how business works in general, and seeing some of the things that were Vince were even today was just like, nope, I'll do anything for business, and it's only business. It's one of those things where he's not going to be a person for everybody. Obviously, we've learned some very, very bad things about him, but as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, he was very good at what he did, and it's a very, very interesting documentary. And to give you a lot of that nostalgia you have for things like Stone Cold and The Rock and things like that. And I still do this all the time. Who doesn't, guys? So that was my week. I'd love to know what you guys are up to. If you want to know more about that Kickstarter, like I said, I've got the link down below. I want you to drop down there and check it out, because I think helping some of these smaller authors get a bigger audience is always something I want to promote here, and I hope you guys are going to be a part of it. So drop in the comments, guys. Let me know what you are up to, and I will talk to you there.